What's up, guys? I'm here today with a Floowandereeze deck profile. So this deck, for those that don't know, it's pretty combo heavy. It's based around normal summoning. So each of your level 1 Floowandereeze monsters has the effect that when you normal summon this card, you basically trigger an effect and then you get to normal summon again. They all, instead of going to the graveyard, they get banished instead. And then if you normal summon Wing Beast monster, you can bring them back from banished to your hand. So they have some really good combos. They do some chain blocking, so they're not super vulnerable to hand traps, although there is some stuff that can kind of hurt them. But overall, it's a pretty fun deck, and it's a really good deck as well. It kind of shuts down a lot of the meta, but I'll get more into that during the deck profile. So let's just get into it. I'm trying not to move the camera too much. So start with, I run 3 copies of Robina. So this is a really good card for the deck. Pretty much when you normal summon it, you get to search a level 4 or lower Wing Beast monster from your deck to your hand, and then you get to normal summon again. And then, like I said, they'll have the effect that when they leave the graveyard, they get banished instead. And then when you summon a Wing Beast, you can add them back to your hand. So yeah, this card's really good. You get to search for other Floowandereeze monsters, or if there's other monsters you want to go into, you can do that as well. It's a very flexible card, which I really like. Next up, I run 3 copies of Eaglin. So Eaglin's effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can add a level 7 or higher Winged Beast monster from your deck to your hand, and then immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon again. So with Eaglin, a lot of the time what you're going to do is add a Empen to your hand, which is the Floowandereeze boss monster. But there's also other cards you can add. You can add a Apex Avian, you can add Ryza, the Mega Monarch, which are 2 other cards I run in this deck. And so there's a lot of options for the deck, which I really like having this card at 3 just for that flexibility, just in case you don't have anything. Any of those 3 cards I just listed, this is a very easy way to search into them. And obviously you can search into Eaglin with the Robina. So the nice thing about Robina is that it's kind of a 1-card combo that gets you into Eaglin. Next, I run 2 copies of Floowandereeze and Stree and 2 copies of Tokan. So Stree's effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can target 1 card in either graveyard, banish it, and then normal summon again. And then Tokan's effect is when this card is normal summon, you can target one of your banished Floowandereeze cards and add it to your hand. So if you're ever in a situation where you have like Empen in your graveyard, which Empen is the boss monster, which we'll get into next, it does not have the effect that when it's sent to the graveyard, banish it instead. So if you get an Empen in your graveyard, you can banish it with Stree, bring it back with Tokan. And if you don't want to do that, you can also banish your opponent's cards. You can add a different banished Floowandereeze card to your hand. There's a lot of different options with these cards, which I really like. It sort of just depends on the state of the game. Let me see if I can fix the camera real quick. All right, next up, I run 2 copies of Floowandereeze and Empen. So this is the boss monster in the deck. This card has the effect, if it's tribute summon, you can add a Floowandereeze spell or trap from your deck to your hand and then normal summon again. And the part that makes this card really, really good is that as long as you have this card in your monster zone, your opponent cannot activate the effects of special summon monsters they have in attack position. So if they special summon in defense position, it's fine, but your opponent can't activate their special summon monster effects while this is on the field, which makes this really good in the meta right now, just with how much sort of special summoning is just going around. So this is a really good card. And then on top of that, I forgot to mention, it's really hard to get over because it has the effect that if this card battles once per battle during damage calc, you can banish 1 card from your hand, which again, it could be a Floowandereeze monster if you wanted to, it doesn't really matter. And then target the opponent's monster that's attacking, and its attack and defense become half of what it is right now. So if your opponent somehow gets a special summon monster out and tries to swing over Empen, you can weaken it, so it makes it even harder to get over. Next, I run 1 Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. This is a really good card. It essentially locks both players into only wind monsters, which is fine because the entire Floowandereeze main deck is wind monsters. And the nice thing about this deck is you don't need an extra deck at all. Pretty much everything you need to do to win with this deck is in the main deck. So I do run an extra deck, but it's completely optional and you don't need it at all. So Stormwinds is nice, just in case you're going into... the only time it's not great, I guess, is if you're in a Floowandereeze mirror match or against a deck like Virtual Worlds, but again, that's what Empen's for. So a lot of times if you can get like an Empen out and Stormwinds, it's kind of really scary for your opponent. Next, I run one copy of Rise of the Mega Monarch and one copy of Mist Valley Apex Avian. So Avian's nice. This is just sort of like a negate effect. So while this card's on the field, once per chain, when a card or effect is activated, you can return a Mist Valley card to your hand and negate one activation on your opponent's side of the field and destroy it. Usually you'll just add Apex Avian back to your hand since we don't run any other Mist Valleys. But this is just a really good negate effect, and again, it's searchable with Eaglin, which I really like. And then Ryza. Ryza is really nice because when this card is tribute summoned, you can target one card on the field and one card in either graveyard. And if this card was tribute summoned by tributing a wind monster, you can target an additional card on the field. So very confusing, but essentially you can target one card on the field and in either graveyard, add those targets on top of the deck, and then add the second card you targeted on the field back to the hand. So you can clear 2 cards on the field and get 1 card from graveyard back to hand, which is really powerful on your turn. So yeah, these 2 cards are pretty nice in the deck. You can obviously switch them out for something else if you want to, but I like running these 2. And that's it for the monsters. Now for spell cards, I run 3 copies of a field spell, Floowandereeze and the Magnificent Map. So with this card, during your main phase, you can reveal a level 1 Floowandereeze monster in your hand and banish 1 Floowandereeze card with a different name from your deck, and then normal summon the revealed monster. So that's nice because you get to banish 1 from deck, which you can bring back with its own effect. You get technically an additional normal summon, which is really nice. And then it also has the other effect during your opponent's turn. When your opponent would normal summon a monster, immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon a Floowandereeze monster. So you can essentially go full combo on your opponent's turn, and which is really, really good because you're essentially just playing on both turns and you get those effects, which is really nice. Next, I run 3 copies of Floowandereeze and the Advent of Adventure. So with this card, you can banish a winged beast monster from your hand or face-up field and add a Floowandereeze monster or field spell from your deck to your hand and then gain 500. So this is just a nice searcher, whether you want a monster like Robina or whether you want to go into the map. Usually, if I don't start with the map, that's what this card is for. But like I said, it's also just a nice searcher in case I already have map out. Next up, I run 1 copy of Floowandereeze in the Unexplored Winds. So with this card, you can conduct a tribute summon that requires 2 tributes by sending a monster on each side of the field to the graveyard instead of tributing. So it's essentially like a soul exchange, but you still get your battle phase, which is really nice. And then it has the additional effect that during your main phase, you can reel up to 2 winged beast monsters from your hand and place them on the bottom of your deck and draw cards equal to the number of cards placed. So you kind of get a redraw in case you have a bad hand or you've already used the effect of some of your monsters and you want to send them back into the deck. And I only run this card at 1 though because it's kind of situational. You don't need it all the time. So I never want to go into a case where I have like 1 or maybe 2 in my hand and I don't need it because it can just kind of clog up your board. Next up, I run 3 Extravagance. So like I said, in this deck, extra deck is not really important at all. You can kind of ditch it whenever you need to, and getting the extra draw is really useful just to get into your cards that you might not be able to search into right away. So I really like having the 3 Extravs just, again, since you don't need your extra deck at all. Next, I run 2 copies of Pot of Duality. I know some people like to run this at 3, but I just run it at 2. Because you can only activate 1 per turn anyway. It has the effect that you can excavate the top 3 cards, add 1 to your hand, and then shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can't special summon during the turn you activate this card, which again doesn't really matter since the entire premise of the deck is normal summoning. The only special summoning you really do is with the extra deck, which you don't need anyway. So this card doesn't really impede your plays at all, so I really like having it in this deck. Next, I run 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This deck likes to go first, and if your opponent has an established board, it can be kind of difficult to get your plays out, just because you don't really have much protection until Empen's already on the board. So having Dark Ruler is just really powerful in case you end up going second, and maybe your opponent has a board that's not necessarily ideal for you. It's just a way to kind of keep your plays alive, because going second with this deck can kind of suck. Next, I run 3 copies of Book of Moon. This is a really good card. It stops DPE, which is the big thing for me, but it's just a really good card in general. You can target one face-up monster in the field, change to face-down defense position if you didn't know what it does already. But I really like this card, again, just for the DPE matchup. It's a pretty good enough hand trap. It's quick play, which is really nice. And yeah, there's not much to say about this card. It's just pretty good. Next, I run 1 Gold Sark. Gold Sark banishes from your deck face up, so you don't even have to wait till the second standby phase to get your card. If I banish a level 1 Floowandereeze from my deck, I can essentially get it back with its own effect that same turn. So I really like having this card at 1. I run 1 Terraforming just to search the field spell in case I don't have any access to it. And then I run 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. This you can switch out for like a Twin Twisters or a Cosmic Cyclone as well. The reason I run this card, and I would also recommend in a side deck playing more spell and trap removal, is because Zombie World completely ruins this deck. Because with Zombie World, it makes all cards on your field and graveyard zombie types. And Floowandereeze monsters require you to summon winged beasts. So if you don't have winged beasts, you can't trigger their effects. So as a result, Zombie World is really dangerous. So if you have an opponent that's playing a zombie deck, or maybe that you can see that they're siding it or whatever, I would really recommend running a lot of spell and trap removal, because otherwise this deck really doesn't work. And then lastly, I run 1 Called by the Grave. So like I said earlier, since these cards have a lot of chain effects, you can chain block cards like Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre very easily. However, cards like Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence can still get over your chain blocks. So I have the Called by, just 1 in case I don't have the ability to chain block, and I can Called by like an Ash or whatever, but it's also good against Effect Veiler. So I really like having this card, even though it's not necessary since you can chain block, but it's some good protection regardless. And that's it for the spell cards. Now for the traps, I run 3 copies of Floowandereeze in the Dreaming Town. So this is a really good card. It says during the main phase, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a level 4 or lower winged beast monster. And if I tribute summon a level 7 or higher monster while this card's in my graveyard, I can banish it and change all monsters my opponent controls to face down defense position. So the second effect is obviously good, but the first effect is really nice. It's essentially similar to the map where you get to play during your opponent's turn, because it doesn't specify during your main phase. So during my opponent's turn, I can flip up Dreaming Town and go full combo if I wanted to, which is, again, really, really nice, because you can put out an Apex Avian to get the negate or an M-Pen to stop special summon effects. It's just very versatile. And then lastly, I play 1 copy of Floowandereeze in the Scary Sea. So if my opponent would special summon a monster while I control a face-up tribute summon monster, I can negate the summon, return that monster back to their hand, or if it's an extra deck monster, back to the extra deck, and then your opponent can't special summon for the rest of the turn, but they get 3 normal summons. So again, this really shuts down a lot of decks because it stops special summoning, and unless you're in the mirror match, the 3 normal summons doesn't do anything. So it's a really powerful counter trap in this deck, and searchable by M-Pen, which I really like. And that's it for the main deck. Now for the extra deck, which, like I said, is completely optional. You don't need to have an extra deck at all. But I run 1 Almirage and 1 Relinquished Anima. These are just pretty easy to bring out in this deck, since Anima needs a level 1 monster and Almirage needs a monster with 1,000 or less attack points. And they're just kind of cards that can take your opponent off guard, especially Anima if they're not expecting it. So I like running these cards. I also run 1 Decode Talker, just kind of in here for extra mainly, but you can go into it, and it's not a bad card. You get the negate, but again, it's just in here for extra. Next, I run some Tri-Brigade stuff. I run 1 Rugal, 1 Shireg, and 1 Farragut. So these are nice because you can go into them with winged beast monsters, which, again, every card in this deck is. They have solid effects that let you, so like Rugal, for example, with this card, if this card's sent to the graveyard, you can make all monsters your opponent controls lose 300 attack for each winged beast, or each monster type, or let me restart. you can make each card your opponent controls lose 300 attack for each monster type you control, which will just be Winged Beast and with Rugal Beast Warrior. But you can make your opponent's cards lose attack points, and this card lets you go into your deck to special summon a level 4 or lower. Or sorry, not your deck, your hand or graveyard. But so that's pretty good. Farragut, you can special summon a level 4 or lower from your hand, and which is fine. I mean, again, the special summoning is not super important. These are all in here for extra, but they have their they have some very situational uses. And like his graveyard effect, this card sent to the graveyard, draw a card and place a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. So it's a nice reshuffle. Shuraig's also pretty good. It's a Link 4, so a little harder to go into, but he's a 3K beater. And he has the effect, if this card, where is it? Hold on. You can banish one card on the field when this card is special summoned. So that's really good. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Beast Warrior or Winged Beast from deck to hand, which this is my favorite card. It's just harder to go into because you really don't want to Link 4 ever in this deck because you can use those cards for normal summons. But it's a good searcher. And again, you're almost never going into it. And then next, some of my favorite cards in this deck and the ones that I actually do go into a little bit. So I run 3 copies of Lyrilusk Assembled Nightingale and 2 copies of Recital Starling. So these are very easy to go into with your level 1 Floowandereeze. And they're really good. Like Nightingale, for example, is really good because you can make it not be destroyed by battle, which means you can go into Downer Magician if you want to, which is a pretty good card. And you can also go into Zeus, which is like the prize card of the extra deck, I guess. But Zeus is kind of expensive. He's like $15 a copy. So if you don't want to play this card, you don't have to. Like I said, it's all optional in the extra deck. But I like having this card just in case my opponent's board gets a little out of control. But like it's really not required at all. But that's it for the extra deck. This deck is pretty fun, and it's pretty easy to learn once you sort of get a grasp of what all the different cards do. And I want to demonstrate real quick. If you guys want, I can make a combo video, but I do want to demonstrate the chain blocking mechanism. So like, let's say I normal summon Rabina. With Rabina, I search Eaglin, and then Eaglin, normal summon, and I can search an Empen, for example, right? And then I contribute both of these in normal summon Empen. But, so like, and then I can use Empen's effect to get a spell or trap, and then normal summon again. And then let's say I want to normal summon Tokan, and I want to use Tokan's effect, but if my opponent tries to negate it, I can chain 1 Tokan, and then chain 2 the effect of Eaglin. So Eaglin's effect, since Tokan was normal summoned, I can add him back to hand, and that chain blocks any hand traps my opponent might play, because they'd have to use those hand traps on my Eaglin effect, which really doesn't happen at all. So that's just kind of how the chain blocking mechanism works in this deck. So it's pretty good, and like I said, I can do a full combo video for this deck. It's easily the best deck I actually own, and it's pretty fun to play. Maybe not for your opponent, since you can lock them out of their special summon monster effects, but it's a pretty fun deck to play. And yeah, let me know if you guys want to see a combo video for this deck. I can do that for sure. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to. Comment below any other deck profiles you might want to see, or any combo video or combo profiles you might want to see for any of my other decks on the channel. And yeah, thanks for watching.